season. We're only, at the time of filming, probably 3 weeks out from opening day in Nebraska. We got some pretty big plans, hopefully, and hopefully we have some luck pretty early. But like I said, not much has really changed in what we're doing tactic-wise at this point, besides gathering all the information.
Yeah, we've got some trail cam images back that have kind of changed where we're going to start and what we thought the properties were in a good way, so that's always good. So got some information, like we said there, gathering that information and developing game plans for opening day.
Yep, it's all just waiting now to see what wind directions are, opening day. Like I said, just keeping up with gathering all the information, try to choose where we want to go first. We think we know, but we'll just keep playing it, not by ear, but seeing what happens and then going from there as far as what properties we want to hunt first. But we got some pretty good spots, we think, for early season, so we're ready for deer season to get here. We'll start with, we talked about a few episodes back, I believe, some of our pet peeves while hunting on public land that we see other people do, some of the things that, make us the most mad while we're out there hunting. And you put up a poll on YouTube to see what everybody else thought, what some of their pet peeves were. We got setting up too close, another hunter using your stand, kind of marking your spot and leaving your stands up, stealing your stuff, whether it be your tree stands or your trail cameras or anything, and then like littering, leaving trash, all that good stuff. The lowest one was using someone else's stand, so that either that doesn't happen to people or they don't care as much as we care if someone were to use our stand. Second from the last one was setting up too close. So either people don't have that happen, or it happens to us way more than it happens to other people. That was at 10%. The third one was littering at 20%. Number 2 was leaving your stands up or trying to mark your spot. And number 1 was stealing. So that must be a common problem throughout public land.
Yeah, I'd say stealing, which is just ridiculous, is the biggest issue people find on public land.
Yeah,
which is just insane if you think about it. Like people stealing other people's stuff. Like you're in the woods, like stereotype, but you're not in the cities. You're not, you wouldn't think with that kind of person, yet your fellow hunters are stealing your stuff.
Yeah,
and it's embarrassing, really.
Yeah, your own people, your own group of people together are stealing your own stuff. It's like being in a locker room and not locking your locker because it should be your own teammates, and you lose your wallet or something because your own teammate stole it, type of a deal. It's like we talked about it in that episode, but it's like we all just need to come together, and just the fact that you see something that somebody else is and just think you can take it, I have no idea what they're thinking. But we kind of talked about it during that episode. If you want to go back and listen to that podcast, you can listen to all the public land hunting ethics that we talked through. So that's just what everybody else thought, which is pretty much about, on par with what I thought most people would say. So they're all big pet peeves. None of them are good. So even the 2% one, another hunter using your stand is still bad, even though it's at 2%. Those are just the top 5 ones. So we'll move on now. We're going to talk about a little bit of the evolution of deer hunting. So this was a MeatEater.com article from 2021 here, and they're just talking about how hunting has changed throughout the years. So I thought we'd just kind of go through it and, say our thoughts on the evolution of deer hunting, maybe where it's going, what we think about the past deer hunting and what it was like. So they talked about way back when, early 1900s through the 1980s or so. There's pretty much a gun hunting tradition, which makes sense. Bow hunting really wasn't out there or popular like it is now for people to do. And I just wrote down, it's kind of like living for the rifle season, which is nothing wrong. That's pretty much how we grew up, was you hunted during the 9-day rifle season, and that was it. But that was pretty much how, deer hunting was before the 1980s, was all deer camps, gun hunting for the 9 days, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there wasn't any other way to do it, really, unless you were using a longbow, which just technology-wise made it so much harder. People wanted to kill something, so they're going to use a rifle, not a longbow. Then the technology and archery equipment increased enough that anybody could do it, I think, is probably your big thing.
Yeah, and I think another big difference is that there were still a lot of just casual hunters. Just by necessity, only having 9 days of a gun season, there weren't a lot of people doing year-round stuff just because you only had 9 days to do it, where now you can hunt for 5 months, so you could put more investment in just because you have more time to do it on your output side.
And I don't know what deer numbers were like, but I'm sure deer numbers have increased. So, if you saw one, you wanted to be able to harvest it, not take your chances with a bow on the one deer you might see. From an efficiency standpoint, kind of like you mentioned, with just the season length, but just being able to harvest something when you see it to put meat in the freezer with deer numbers being lower than what we're blessed with today.
I think. They definitely aren't what they are now. That's for sure. So that, like you said, that makes it too different. You can't really manage a whole lot of, for mature bucks like people do now. If you only have one little buck on your property that someone else shoots during rifle season anyways, there's no reason putting that amount of effort into it. Like I said, it's more casual type, I don't know if we'd call it more just for the fun of it type of hunters, but that's probably more of what it was. You're not doing the shed hunting, not doing the preseason scouting. You're going to the same stands that you always do. And there's still a lot of people that still, like we said, here in Nebraska that just do the 9-day gun season. They go to the same stands every time and have a blast of doing it, and it's still perfectly fine. I just think that style of hunting is is declining just because of how much information is out there on the, hunting big bucks or hunting public land.
And I think it's bad to say, but I think you're not cool if you don't bow hunt. Like the cool kids are bow hunting, and that's kind of been what it's trended towards. I mean, when we grew up watching hunting shows on TV, there was no bow hunting, personalities on there. It was all gun hunts. Mm-hmm. And if you saw a bow hunt, you turn the channel because you're like, what is this? This is so different than anything I can relate to. And now you hardly see a gun hunt, and it's, hashtag bow only, and you can only do archery things now. So you don't see that a whole lot.
Yep. Especially in the whitetail hunting, you don't see rifle hunts.
No.
Especially on like YouTube, that's like a bow only platform essentially. You don't see people rifle hunting deer on YouTube. You see it on TV a little bit, but not on the YouTube stuff. But it's definitely, and that's the way social media has pushed it, is that you should be a bow hunter, you shouldn't be a rifle hunter. And that's probably the wrong way to push it. It doesn't matter if you're a rifle hunter or a bow hunter, but that's the way hunting has been pushed, is to be a bow hunter. So it'd be interesting to see if the gun season comes back around. But I think the biggest problem with gun season is that it's only 9 days or however long it is in most states. And
people want to do it longer, and bow hunting lends itself to doing it longer. That's why we started picking up bow hunting, is because we had a longer season. We had 4 months instead of 9 days, and hunt public land, and it's safer, and that was our big thing.
Yeah, so there's still quite a bit of that around, I guess, depending on what state you're in. Wisconsin, Minnesota, more of that gun hunting tradition still sticks around, but different states it's kind of on the decline. It'll probably keep going before it levels off. But going now into like the 1980s, so before we were born by quite a few years yet. But this is where you talked about deer numbers not being as high. This was the increase in deer numbers was during kind of the 1980s when there was more management, and that equals more hunters. So in the 1980s, we started to get, not the numbers we have today, but just more hunters in general, more people out whitetail hunting.
Yeah, and I think we're maybe seeing an inflection point, or kind of a same type of situation now with deer numbers and balancing that management from farming and conservation and that kind of thing, where it'll be interesting to see, looking back in 20 years, this moment kind of similar to the 1980s, almost in reverse, I guess, in my opinion, just when managing numbers and the amount of hunters and that kind of thing that you saw there in the 80s.
Yeah, it might be kind of interesting to see if I can put words into what I'm thinking here, but to see what the difference is and how many hunters that we can sustain. Like, so the 1980s through now, there's been an increase. So did we increase too much, and now there's not enough opportunity, and people feel like opportunity, places to hunt, that sort of thing, and now your numbers are going back down? And will it come back up, or will it level off? Like, at what point? Because at some point, you're going to have as many hunters as you're probably going to get. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it seems like there's got to be a sustainable number of hunters before your quality of hunting starts to decline, which means less hunters. There's got to be a range, I guess. It'd be interesting to see over the years where that number sits, I guess. So I just thought that would be kind of interesting to see where that number lies. If you can, maybe you can't have too many hunters. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Maybe we're not even close to that number. But just going back to the 1980s, like I said, higher deer numbers and easier access to media, so TV, DVDs, magazines. So the hunting media, not that like we know it now, but the start of what we know now kind of started taking off with technology in the 1980s, which again helps conservation efforts and helps there just be more hunters in general. So we switched from, like what we talked about before, the gun hunting, which was more of a ground-based hunting, whether you're, probably just make your own blind type of a deal, to now there's more tree stand hunting, which I think completely changes deer hunting, makes it more interesting for hunters, gives a new tactic for hunters, kind of like hunting from the ground does now, or cell cameras are probably getting people interested now. But the ground-based hunting switched to tree stand hunting kind of in the 1980s with the invention of the tree stand. And now I think it's kind of going back to ground, not necessarily going back, but more people are doing the ground-based hunting even with a bow now.
Yeah, I mean, I think tactics are changing just because of the ability to see different things. But I think with the shift towards tree stands, I think that's a shift towards all of technology. I'd be interested to see when you start seeing, scent products and scent elimination sprays and food plots and all the commercialization of hunting. I would say that's a 1980s thing. Maybe that lends itself to that, like tree stands, and then, we have a better tree stand, or now we have a grunt call, and kind of not just taking your gun, taking your camo, going to the woods and hunting, but then getting these products pushed. And I think that, pushed money into the industry, which is a good thing, but then kind of changed hunting too.
Yeah, that commercialization, like you said, and that was the next thing on my list to go to, which was perfect. But like you said, it pushed more money, which is great. It helps it grow, but then you get to a certain point in technology and money bring in problems, I guess, too, if you want to look at it that way. It's good and it's bad, both at the same time. It's kind of that what product is next, what's the next big thing, and that, like you said, helps the industry grow, though, because there's new products coming out, which makes it easier and funner for everybody to hunt, which lends itself to there being more hunters.
Yeah, because, I mean, we've all used that stuff. It's there, and we use it, and we try it, and it's money into the industry, which is beneficial.
Yeah, and you kind of combine, and that new technology and all that new stuff that comes in makes it so much easier to attract new hunters, which is perfect. That should be what it's for, to make things easier for current hunters, make it more fun, more enjoyable, and get new hunters. So you combine that with good deer numbers, and that are hopefully staying where they're at. It's kind of a perfect storm for the rise of the deer hunting industry, I guess.
They've talked about, like, college football. They do those shows with, like, the top 10 college football innovations or something. This kind of came to me, but, like, one of the top 10, I think, innovations for hunting was trail cameras. And I think that lends along the line of making it funner and interesting and getting new people involved. When trail cameras came along and you could put a camera up to see things when you weren't there and see the bucks that you didn't see, when you weren't hunting. And I think the innovation of trail cameras in the hunting industry took hunting to a whole new level.
Yeah, it kind of made it that year-round pursuit. So you have bow hunting becoming more popular,
and the products with food plots and such.
You have tree stands, you have more hunters, more money, more innovation, and now, like with the trail cameras and stuff, that makes it a year-round, the perfect storm for people to be able to have a hobby that's year-round, not just a 3-month, 9-day hobby. It's year-round. That's kind of where you've seen the evolution, I think, probably the 2000s for year-round deer management. So now there's food plots and, big deer, like I had trail cameras down, which you mentioned, buying property specifically for deer, all that kind of hits, full swing.
And that's something that was unheard of when our dad was growing up hunting. It was we're doing other things, and then on the weekends we'll go pheasant hunt, or we'll go deer hunt when the season rolls around. Like, it wasn't a year-long thought process that it is for us now. Like, even for him, it's not. He waits till a month and we'll clue him in. But for us, it's a year-long process, and it just wasn't something he grew up doing. None of them did. Growing up, a year-long process of managing whitetails. Very few people did.
I think if he heard of somebody that bought land specifically for deer, I don't think that wasn't even a thing. Like, it was pasture land for cattle or cornfield, and that's what you deer hunted. It wasn't, I bought this to deer hunt specifically.
Yeah. And that's what permission kind of leads itself to permission. Well, he could go anywhere and get permission, because no one was doing it strictly for deer. Now you could drive around, you'll find places that are strictly for deer that you can't get permission on, because they're basically raising deer, not cattle or whatever else.
No one cared because it was for cattle or for corn, not for deer. And when big deer become valuable, the money, the trail cam pictures, the hunting articles, all that stuff, that's when it's harder to get permission. And it has definitely become harder to get permission because people now see money signs associated with whitetail deer.
Yeah.
And they talked about it too, and I thought that was good. But this increased, passion, which is great for whitetails and whitetail hunting, has led to kind of obsessions or an increased possessiveness of deer, which is kind of what we were just talking about. Whether it be the public land guy on social media, or whether it be the guy that bought that property specifically for hunting, doesn't want anybody to know about the big deer. We're not telling anybody about it. I'm not going to, say anything. Or if it gets shot on somebody else's property, he's mad because that was his, even though it's not, deer are the property of everyone. So I own the deer in Iowa just like you do, or just like people who live in Iowa. It's a publicly owned. Wildlife are publicly owned. You can't no one owns any deer. The bucks we've seen on the property we're going to be hunting this year in the soybean field, we don't own them in any way just because we've seen them first.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's everybody's. If I go to public land in Iowa, that deer is just as much mine as it is the guy that lives down the street, which is great. But it has, like I said, there's some people that see it now as that's my buck.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the North American, could very well be wrong, but the North American kind of model of their wildlife management is that it is a public resource for the benefit of all. And I think that's why it's sustainable and can be sustainable, and why you've seen hunting in America, have success stories as, in whitetail deer populations and turkey populations. It is an investment of the public and that people can get behind.
Yep. And media and technology, we've talked about this probably before, and won't end, but will drive the future of whitetail hunting. I mean, who knows what the next, you mentioned trail cameras. I know cell cameras are the big thing now. I've seen articles in 3 different magazines about cell cameras, if they're ethical, what people are using them. That's the biggest trend right now that I see is, those wireless trail cameras or whatever, sending pictures to your phone. Not sure how that's going to affect the industry. I can see Game and Parks going to have to make regulations on those, when and where you can't use them.
Fair chase arguments.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Not sure where that's going to go, but that's just an example of how technology has changed hunting and how people hunt. I think those trail cameras are going to lead to more possessiveness and, obsessions over deer, because you can look. If we had a
every day it'll send you a picture.
I could look right now and see what deer's walking by the camera. It's just an obsession that, for some people, could ruin a marriage or a friendship. There's tons of friendships that have been ruined over a big deer that shouldn't have happened. But I think those trail cameras and technology might just lead to that. Social media does the same thing at certain points. But technology is going to drive, how we hunt in 20 years and what deer populations are like. Hopefully the technology helps the Game and Parks people, helps the, university researchers, get the information they need to make sure we have deer for the next 1,000 years. So, but technology is going to just continue to evolve. Deer hunting going to evolve with it. So it can help connect us or it can tear us apart. I guess this is my plea to the people. It can tear us apart or connect us. I guess I hope it just connects us and makes us better deer hunters and better conservationists. We'll move on now to the out of left field segment. This is where we kind of talk about everything to do with sports and nothing to do with hunting at all. So I got a couple of them down. I didn't clue you in on the second one, so I'll wait on that one because I don't think you'll be able to come up with it off the top of your head. But we'll talk about this one. So for you people in the South, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, you like your football just like we like our football here in Nebraska. But the question I have, I just came up with this one because it gets argued all the time. So we can probably keep it stuck to football, or let's keep it with football. Is the SEC the best football conference?
I mean, the only one that's going to put up a fight is the Big Ten, because the Pac-12 is definitely not, and the ACC doesn't have the depth to do it. I think the South SEC is the most football-obsessed conference. I don't know that they're necessarily the best. They have good top teams. I don't know if the depth runs through their conference like it does in the Big Ten. But Alabama's won every time. But Ohio State, all these teams have been in there, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you have to take out the top 3. Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama. They win all the time. Alabama wins all the time. You take out Alabama, Georgia is the only one that's been close in the last.
And they hadn't been when Mark Richt was there.
Yeah, LSU won, they made it in.
But they only won one national championship with Les Miles.
And now they were 5-5. So I think if you take out the top teams in each one, to me, and this might be biased, the Big Ten is like you said, a deeper conference than the SEC. The SEC drops off pretty quick. If it wasn't for Alabama, they wouldn't even, I don't think, have anybody close to competing.
Yeah, because Florida was good with Urban Meyer, and then now they're getting better. The same with Georgia. They were kind of there all the time, but not over the hump with Mark Richt, and now they're kind of coming back. But you could say the same thing with Big Ten, Penn State and Michigan. Always at the top, never over the hump. So it's like,
I just think as you go through depth-wise, those are stronger teams than Vanderbilt and whoever else.
Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Yeah, that's just my opinion, I guess. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on this. They say it all the time. They claim they're the best conference. Outside, their baseball is pretty good. But for football-wise, I don't know. They're definitely in the top 2. It's Big Ten or SEC.
Yeah.
And they definitely have good teams, not saying that. But I feel like if you took out, if Nick Saban stayed at wherever he was coaching in the NFL, Miami, Alabama, odds are, wouldn't be that good. I don't think the SEC would be that good.
What do you say now with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma? Does that make, I think that makes
the SEC the best conference. Yeah. Texas is still a powerful brand, whether they're 8-4 and Oklahoma's still good. That makes you way deeper than the Big Ten. Whoever the Big Ten gets, Iowa State and Kansas, doesn't help you.
No.
Unless you go get
Clemson. And you still have Maryland and Rutgers.
Yeah.
In there. Not that Nebraska's program is much better.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, like you said, now with them going there, SEC is the best conference. That's not good. We'll move on now. Since we're approaching the early season, start here, September 1st for us in Nebraska, we'll talk about some early season bow hunting mistakes. And this is an article that I believe the author wrote down what he thought were what mistakes people make during the early season. I thought we'd talk about them, see if we thought they were actually mistakes, and just kind of go from there. So, hunting mornings, he thought was a mistake in the early season.
No, completely false. I would completely disagree with that. I'd be interested to see why he said it was a mistake, if you have that, but no, I would completely disagree. I think it depends on how you hunt it. If you don't hunt it wisely, or you're sitting on a food source and you're bumping the deer every time you go in the mornings. But if you're set up on beds and you have the intel to tell you mornings is the time to be there, then not hunting.
Your wish is granted. He said too much pressure and a low probability of a buck on his feet during daylight is why you shouldn't hunt mornings. I don't have written down where this article was from, so I can't send anybody to go read it or see who it was. But
just based off our experience hunting mornings in the early season, I'd say that's false. And I hunted with some of the best in THP and hunted mornings all the time with guys that definitely know what they're doing, and mornings didn't slow them down one bit.
I mean, the thing I've seen here, it can be 65, 70 degrees in the morning in September, and it's going to be 85, 90 in the evenings. So it's cooler in the mornings. Mm-hmm. Doesn't it make more sense for typically if it's cooler, deer, animals in general are on the move more than they are when it's hot. To me, it makes sense that he's on his feet longer in the mornings than he is in the evenings.
When it's cooler.
And we just got trail camera pictures of some really nice bucks at 9:57 in the morning moving around. It gets light here at 6:15 in the morning right now. So he's
3.5 hours after daylight, he's still on his feet.
He's still up and moving around, but that's closer to where he's going to bed. So like you said, it depends on where you're hunting. If you're hunting a food plot and you're going to be bumping them and you're not going to be close to the bedding, they're going to be gone. You're probably not going to see very much. But outside of that, I don't see why hunting mornings is why he's not going to be on his feet. Why wouldn't he be on his feet?
Yeah, he's still there somewhere. Like that buck's still there. If he's on your property, just give him that buck is on your property somewhere. He's still there. Just because it's morning doesn't mean he disappears or he's in bed already before the sun comes up.
Yep, and if you do it appropriately and you're not pressuring too much, hunting mornings I think is perfectly fine. We sat over the river in September. I don't know if he's considering early season hunting. But there's deer crossing that river like crazy in the mornings, coming back from food, going to bedding.
Yeah, and I think it's a hunting strategy thing too. Maybe he hunts in a way that he doesn't see a lot or doesn't pay off just based off the way he's hunting. But then, our hunting strategy of being mobile and moving around and the whole buck bed thing changes our strategies a little bit, and that we're seeing them too. So it's a strategy thing depending on how you like to hunt.
Moving on to the second one now, he said it's a mistake to forget about the bugs. I would agree.
Yes.
So that is an actual mistake. So you'll just move around too much. If there's gnats, we get gnats and flies and mosquitoes. Just depends on the year, but usually there's mosquitoes or those little gnats are the worst around here. I know if you go south, obviously it gets worse and worse. We use thermocells and they're great, but forgetting to bring the thermocell is definitely a mistake.
Yes.
So not too much there to talk about that one. That one's pretty obvious. That's a big mistake. So forgetting scent control was the next one. I have yes and no, because if you play the wind like you should, thinking about where the deer's coming from, where your stand is, how you're getting in, you shouldn't need scent control. But simply the scent eliminating spray, which we don't really use, if a deer gets downwind of you, it might help. So it's kind of for us, it doesn't really matter. They're going to smell you anyways, even if you have it or not.
Yeah, it's more, if you're playing the wind in with scent control, yes, like you said. Like if you're paying attention to where your wind's blowing, which you should always be doing, whether it's early season or middle of December. But yeah, scent control as far as products, we don't use them. We just try to play the wind. It might help you, but their noses are so good. If he gets downwind of you or even crosses your trail, he's probably going to smell you.
Yeah, so I think it's more forgetting to play the wind is a mistake more than forgetting scent control.
Yeah.
And I think he went through, he had this whole big thing where scent eliminating soap, even not in the season, he used in this whole big scent control, regimen. But like I said, if you play the wind and you're downwind of him and he's not downwind of you, doesn't matter what scent control you're using. Moving on now, didn't shoot enough at the range or didn't shoot your bow enough before the season, which I think is definitely a mistake. We don't shoot, admittedly, as much as we should, and we are, I thought this the other day, we're shooting more now because we have some really nice bucks on camera, so we want to be prepared, but we should have done that every year because you never know what buck is going to walk in front of you.
Yeah.
But we don't shoot enough in the off season. We're doing it more now, and I'm seeing myself be a better shot, but definitely a mistake not to shoot enough before season.
Yeah, definitely practice and just being confident in your equipment and what you can do, so that I think it makes things calmer in that moment of truth when you're confident in your equipment and your ability to do it.
Yep, so definitely a mistake on that one. Don't disagree on that one. And didn't preseason scout. If you think that is a mistake or not. I say yes and no because I don't think you necessarily have to, but it will definitely help you if you do it. So it's definitely a mistake for us, I would say. We would say it's a mistake not to preseason scout, but I don't think you would necessarily have to.
No, I think it's, it lends it to being good for us because that's our strategies and that's how we kind of play off and do different things, is the scouting and the stuff that we've seen. But like the one place, our Southern Public Land Unit, we've hunted it multiple times, so we didn't even get scouted at all because we know the places that we're going to go. It's small enough. We know the places we're going to go. We know the lay of the land. We know where to start and how to make quick moves from there. But new properties, we were scouting this winter and this spring, trail cameras and velvet scouting and doing all the preseason scouting things.
Yeah, we haven't even been to the one we've been hunting the last 3 or 4 years just because, like you said, we know it so well. We know where we're going to go if we do go there. So in that case, we didn't need the preseason scouting. But like you said, new properties for sure, if you don't preseason scout, definitely going to hurt you. And I think it just gives you a better starting point. You're going to get to that end result where you need to be faster if you do the preseason scouting. If you don't, you might get there. It's going to take you longer.
Yeah, you'll find out the preseason scouting things during the season. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, it just might get you there quicker if you do it.
The next one, and I want to see what you think on this. This was his statement. He said, a mistake because you hunted over a food source. And so this is the quote, bucks will be last to enter the field. Most of it occurs after dark. And there's a specific scenario I'm thinking of that happened to us that I'm wondering if you're thinking why that statement isn't true, at least for us.
Yeah, I mean, every buck is different. Every property is different. Every night is different. I mean, I just seen that meme thing from QDMA or whatever that said, asking if the buck was going to be there on opening day, and then he's not going to show up opening day, but he was there all summer long, so it's kind of similar to that. But I mean, we just velvet scouted, and the first deer into the field were 3 bucks and a doe, and they all came together during daylight with 2 hours left. But then I've been in places, and it's all does, and the bucks are coming out right at last light.
Literally 10 minutes
so it's
before last light.
I think it's a pressure thing and a property thing, and it's kind of the preseason scouting or velvet scouting lends itself to like this bachelor group of bucks, or a bachelor group of bucks is always coming out pretty early, or they're not coming out early. I mean, need to move farther back too. Yeah,
like you said, it goes back to scouting. So I don't think you can make that an absolute statement that most of bucks movement occurs at night. And most of it probably is going to occur at night because there's only a 2-hour window where they like to move in the evening and the morning. Otherwise, there's 8 hours of darkness. So yes, they're going to move more at night, and you can't hunt at night. So yeah, but it goes back to scouting where you have to scout your specific areas because, like you said, we've seen bucks beat the does to soybeans this year, and we've seen it the other way around where it's typical does, little bucks, big bucks, you're seeing them 15 minutes before you got to pack up and leave. So it all goes back to scouting. I don't think you can say that bucks will always be the last to enter the field.
And a public land's a pressure thing. I mean, the one Southern Public Land Unit where we've seen that steady progression of does, smaller bucks, big bucks, is in a place that's highly pressured, where the places we're going now we don't think are as highly pressured, and they're a little bit more just kind of back there away from everything. And that's when you're seeing just deer come out when they're comfortable.
Yep. Moving on, to the final one is checking your trail cameras too often. And I would say that is a mistake. And it's something that I and we try to limit. I want to check them all the time. Sometimes we check them in the past, I know more than we should. This year, if we're getting the info, we're going to check them at least once because we want to have, like I told Barry the other day,
some information.
The most recent information we can get to make a decision. Otherwise, I think you're guessing more than you are, making an informed decision. But once we've checked them once now, and we know there's deer there, or there's bucks there we want to go after, we can game plan. We might do some velvet scouting if the area lends itself to it, but then we're not checking them again. So I think that's our process, and I like how that's worked for us this year anyways. Yeah. Not checking them every 2 weeks. If we find what we need, we're not going back. The one property we just velvet scouted, seen bucks, we haven't even checked that camera, and we don't even care to check it. We know what we need to know, so we won't even go check it.
I think that's the big thing, is what information are you looking to gain from that trail camera? Are you looking to track the same buck and see how many times he's coming past? Or are you looking just to see if there's bucks in the area? Is there a shooter buck in the area? Because if you're looking to see if there's a shooter buck in the area, you might have to go back more to check it to see if there's somebody there. If you're just looking to see if there's deer there, maybe your preseason scouting gave you that information, or a quick velvet scout or a drive in the evening pass there gives you that information. Doesn't mean you can't put the trail camera up there, but you can probably check it less. Like you said, with that property, we wanted to know if there was bucks in the area. We saw 4 of them come out to a bean field. There's no reason for us to keep trampling around in there, going back to that trail camera, when what we wanted to know is were there bucks in the area? There were, and that's what we were trying to gain from the trail cameras in the first place.
Yeah, and I think in the past we have checked them too much. It's hard. You'll never know if it helped you or hurt you, but I think now we've realized we got our system down that works for us as far as how we want to use them, and that's what we've used, and I think it's definitely helped us.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to stop quick, take a moment to let you guys know, you've heard it before, but how you can support the Out Here Show. The best way to go online, go to our website, whitetailinstinct.com, and check out our apparel. We got t-shirts, sweatshirts. We'll have more coming out before deer season, so head over there, see if you can't find something you like, purchase it. It would definitely help us out. Allows us to keep doing the Out Here Show. Allows us to keep doing our Whitetail Instinct channel, which is where we have our blog videos, some velvet scouting we got coming up, and obviously all the deer season content that we produce during deer season. So if you want to support the show, go to whitetailinstinct.com, check out the apparel. Moving on now, we're going to go to a Beating the Crowds article. This was in Outdoor Life. We'll talk about it real quick here as we're getting somewhat short on time, but kind of a beating the crowds on public land, kind of ways we have found to, beat the crowds, beat the other hunters on public land. And so this is an article that a person wrote about how he's done that, so I thought we could kind of, like I usually say, talk through it and see what we think. His first was find the right small properties. And to me, the big word in that sentence or statement is find the right small properties to hunt. So I think small properties are great. They've been great to us so far this year and in the past, but it's finding the right one. So I thought maybe you could talk through what we look for when we're looking for small properties. And it depends on your definition of small. I'm going to say
we're looking at quarter sections here, like
180 acres.
Yeah, the most.
And for us, that's typically all the public land is here in Nebraska. So technically we hunt a lot of small. So break it up into, I guess, where you're at. If 80 acres is small in your area, but usually I'm going to say under 180 acres for a small piece of public. What we look for in small pieces of public.
Yeah, I think we're continuing to evolve this as we learn more and get in the field more and see different things. I think the big thing that we found is having it be connected and having the surrounding habitat. Just because the property that you can hunt doesn't have the technical habitat that you'd want to see on a place you want to hunt, if the stuff around it is deery, then take a look at that property and it has potential. Because I know a couple of the properties we're hunting now, you wouldn't think much about them, which is good because maybe people see them and overlook them, but the surrounding properties are like on fire with deer and are really, really good. So finding those areas that are connected and have that around, I mean, we're talking about wetlands and fence rows as habitat for these small properties that are producing big deer, just because of the surrounding connections that they're moving from one place to another. And I think that's the big thing I found is that don't just look at that property on the map and focus in on it, but look around it and see what that has to show for what could be there.
Yeah, that was the first one I put down is it has to be connected in some way.
And it can just be an island of habitat by itself.
It can be, and I have however small, it can be a fence row with plum thickets in it, or 5 cottonwood trees, or just some sort of cover, some sort of connection. A fence row in a swamp between 2, cedar tree pastures. That's probably going to be just about good enough. If you can find a spot to sit or get it in a tree, we found anyways, that's probably going to be good enough.
Yeah, and I think deer numbers play a role in that too, making sure you're in an area that has high deer numbers. If you get in that area with low deer numbers, obviously your odds of seeing something on the marginal habitat that's not those bigger wood chunks, maybe less because the deer numbers are lower. But if you get a high deer number area, your odds of seeing something in maybe one of those off the wall spots, I think is going to be a little higher.
Yeah, it's like creeks, fence rows, trees, a strip of grass. Like literally, it can be literally anything. It's what we found.
They're very adaptable to being in a lot of different places.
Yeah, and it takes a little bit of looking at them to know how much is enough
just taking
and how
the
much
chance.
isn't. And that's the big thing. If you have an extra camera, throw it out there and see what happens. Because we put cameras up on a couple spots this year. We're like, let's just see what's even here. We got them back and we're like, holy crap. So it just takes, like you said, taking a chance on a spot. If it just looks any bit interesting. The first one we went to, how we even found it, we knew it was public, but we looked at it on the map the first time and didn't think anything of it. We were driving to the other one, and we were driving out, and I'm like, man, there's some cedar trees back there that just looks deery from the road. It's, I don't know, 500 yards, 400 yards from the road. Like, man, that just looks kind of good. We looked at it on Google Earth, seen there was beds in there, and went back, hung the trail camera, and there's good deer in there. So it was all just something, it just looked good. Like most of the guys that hunt deer know what good deer habitat looks like. If it's interesting or piques your attention, you probably know that there's deer in there, so just throw a camera up and see what happens.
Yeah, just about taking a chance, risking it a little bit, and seeing what happens. You can always just, let the trail camera like that do the work for you if you're kind of, on the fence about it. Let it see what's there, and then that'll make your decision for you.
Yeah, and there needs to be, we found, like, edge habitat. But that's in general deer hunting anyway, so as long as you have some of that edge habitat, fields, as long as there's no other hunters, obviously we found the fields and the one property have been great, but there's nobody else hunting it that we can tell, at least right now. Swamps, CRP, anything, just some sort of edge, along with it being connected, and that just adds to the possibility of there being good deer there. Most people want to know, like, they go to the bigger properties because they want more options. So most of these properties, we have one spot where we're going to sit. And I think when you're doing an out-of-state hunt for sure, even in-state guys, they tend to go to the bigger properties just because they feel like they have more options if the first stand doesn't work. But we found as long as you have the right spot on the one property, you can have 8 different small properties. It's just as good as 5 different stands on one property.
Yeah, and I think looking, now that we've seen these things in person and in a sense stumbled upon them, based off kind of intuition and what we were thinking, now we can identify these on a map. So that's kind of the evolution of finding some of them, seeing what they look like in person, even if you stumble upon them like we did, and now we can identify those on a map. So we happen to go somewhere else, different state, we can kind of go, hey, this is something we pulled from Nebraska, but now let's look at a map and find them from the map without having to stumble upon them over a 6-month period.
Yeah, like I said, now I think we can look at them in Google Earth and go, that's a spot we want to hit before we hit the bigger ones now, just because we've seen it enough on the ground that now, like you said, we can see them, but it's just an evolution, process to get there. Talk about access a little bit. Hard to access is obviously better if there's, what we found anyways, if there's, and this is widely known knowledge, but hills, anything steep or far, in water. If you have to cross water in any way, even a little creek that you can jump, it stops most people.
Yeah. It's a big thing on our southern public land unit because we've had a few dry years, and not having water in there has let people go everywhere. Where in years before there was bucks right behind that water just because it just stopped people immediately. Yep. And I'll never complain about crossing water ever again, no matter what I have to do to cross it.
Yeah, so you can get to you can beat most of the people by just crossing something or walking up a hill that no one wants to. We walk so many hills, it's ridiculous that I don't want to walk, but no one else wants to walk them either, so that's where the deer are. The other one that people have talked about, and we've never found, I guess I can't remember any time we've ever found it, but, deer that are bedding close to the road. But we're still kind of feeling that one out. I don't know that I've ever found a spot where deer are bedding close to a parking area, close to a road, where people are walking by them, and we're setting up closer to where everybody else is.
Yeah, I think there's too many damn people on the ones we're hunting. They found out the spots. They just hunt everywhere. And then some of ours is there's not, like, huntable area by the parking lot, if that makes sense. Like the habitat around there is just like short grass yards or something, kind of that kind of thing, where like it's not like big woods in Wisconsin where it's all woods where you can have woods right by the parking lot. We don't usually tend to have too much of that.
Typically close to the parking lot's open and not deer habitat where a buck's going to be anyways. But yeah, that's one we're filling out, but it's one if you live in a different state that maybe lends itself more to that. Something to think about. But those are kind of our ways of beating the crowds. The biggest one for us is finding the overlooked properties that don't look like anything from the aerial map, and just seeing if there's actually deer there, and it's turned out pretty well.
And being overlooked can mean a lot of different things. I think that's something to remember too, is don't limit your definition of overlooked. It can mean by the road, it can mean 2 miles back, it can mean across water, it can be a pond, it can be just a cornfield, it can be, a property that doesn't look like much, or that kind of thing. Overlooked can mean a lot of different things, so keep your definition of overlooked pretty broad.
Yeah, because it can be here, people don't hunt just cornfields, they want trees or something, or they won't hunt swamps. But in Michigan, maybe everybody's hunting the swamps, nobody's hunting the flat oak, the oak flats or the grass CRP area. So it's just different for each area. What are the people not hunting in your area that hunt the opposite way?
And it could be different for every property too. One property, look at your properties and look, like you said, kind of like the limiting factor of where the deer are going to be, plus the limiting factor of people. Where's the area here that they're not going? And that's usually tends to have good results.
Yep. That'll wrap it up for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, every Monday at noon, the Out Here Show comes out on YouTube, and you can listen to the audio version as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Also, go over to Whitetail Instinct. It's our other YouTube channel. That's kind of where we put some of these tactics and some of the stuff we're talking about. You can see how we're doing it, I guess, or see at least how our deer season's going, with the ups and downs and all that good stuff. We're going to have some stuff obviously coming out in the next couple of weeks as deer season opens, and we've been doing some velvet scouting. But just thanks again for watching. Go over, check out our apparel on our website, and come back here next Monday for another Out Here Show.